If your belly fat showed up out of nowhere, your fasting glucose makes no sense when you wake up, and your meter feels like a random number generator every time you eat, then this video is for you. Because here's what I want you to hear at the start. Your body is not broken. Your body is not betraying you. Your body is responding to physiology. And once you understand that physiology, the path forward gets a whole lot clearer. High blood sugar and stubborn belly fat don't happen randomly. They share a root cause. And that root cause has three parts happening at once. First, glucose is sitting in your bloodstream because your muscle cells aren't pulling it in efficiently. Second, your liver is dumping extra glucose overnight, even when you're not eating, because it's become insulin resistant and can't get the signal to stop. Third, visceral fat has built up around your organs and deep inside your liver and muscle cells, and that fat is jamming the very machinery that insulin needs to work. Most people only ever hear about the first two. Nobody connects the third to fasting glucose and belly fat at the same time. And that's exactly what this video is going to fix. I'm going to show you what I believe is the best fasting method for reducing belly fat and restoring insulin sensitivity. Not because it's trendy, not because it's extreme, but because it actually lines up with human physiology. And I'm going to show you why fasting alone is not the whole answer. Because if you don't remove the real source of insulin resistance, you can fast harder and still stay stuck. If you want our free guide to put this into action with a step-by-step meal plan, movement strategy, and real case studies, comment guide below. It's completely free. Now, let's get into the physiology. Before we talk about fasting, you need to understand one thing. Think of insulin as a key. Your muscle and liver cells are the locks. When those cells are clean and healthy, the key turns easily. Glucose flows in, gets used for energy, and your blood sugar comes right back down. But when excess fat builds up inside those cells, especially intramyocellular fat in muscle and intrahepatic fat in the liver, the lock gets jammed. Insulin shows up. It tries to turn the key. The signal doesn't go through. So glucose stays in your bloodstream longer than it should, and your pancreas keeps pumping out more insulin trying to fix a problem it can't reach. That's insulin resistance, and carbohydrates didn't cause it. They're just revealing it. Research has repeatedly linked intramyocellular lipid and intrahepatic lipid with worse insulin sensitivity and higher fasting insulin. Mechanistic work from Gerald Schulman's group of researchers helped explain precisely how lipid buildup disrupts insulin signaling in both muscle and liver, showing that the fat inside the cell, not the carbohydrate in the meal, is the primary disruptor. Here's why that matters for your morning number. When you wake up with high fasting glucose and you haven't eaten anything, that's not carbohydrates from the night before haunting you. That's your liver. In the early morning, hormones like cortisol and growth hormone tell the liver to release glucose. That's completely normal. But when the liver is insulin resistant, it overshoots. It leaks out more glucose than you need. Your insulin tries to put the brakes on, but the lock is jammed. So glucose keeps rising anyway. That's the dawn phenomenon, and it's a liver problem, not a carbohydrate problem. Now you understand what we're actually trying to fix. Let's talk about fasting. Fasting helps for a very specific reason. When you stop eating, insulin levels fall. And when insulin levels fall consistently over a long enough window, the body shifts into a different metabolic mode, mobilizing stored fuel, tapping into liver fat, and giving the system a chance to stop being bombarded around the clock. Think of it like a cluttered room. If you keep piling boxes in without ever clearing space, the room never gets organized. Fasting creates a window where the body can stop taking deliveries and start clearing the backlog. But here's the part most people miss. Fasting is not a license to keep eating the same diet that created the problem. If the foods you eat during your eating window are high in saturated fat, highly processed, and low in fiber, you're still feeding the root cause of insulin resistance. The fasting window lowers the traffic. It doesn't fix the roads. That's why fasting alone often feels disappointing. Not because fasting doesn't work, but because the metabolic environment you're fasting from still drives insulin resistance right back up the moment you eat again. So fasting is one powerful lever, but it has to be pulled alongside the right nutrition. We'll come back to that. First, let's look at what the research actually says about which fasting method works best. A 2024 meta-analysis looked at 13 studies, including 867 people with type 2 diabetes, and compared 4 intermittent fasting approaches: twice per week fasting, fasting mimicking diets, time-restricted eating, and periodic fasting. The authors found that intermittent fasting regimens generally performed better than conventional diet approaches for blood glucose and insulin sensitivity outcomes. And there was not one single winner that crushed every other method. method in every category. Here's why that finding matters. It suggests the benefit isn't magic, it's metabolic. Lower insulin exposure over time, better access to stored fuel, and a structured opportunity to reduce the energy overflow that drives insulin resistance in the first place. The pattern matters as much as the restriction. But now compare that to what happens when you simply eat less every single day. A 2019 trial by Gable and colleagues looked at adults with overweight or obesity who also had insulin resistance. They compared alternate day fasting with daily calorie restriction over 12 months. Weight loss was not dramatically different between the two groups, but alternate day fasting produced far bigger improvements in insulin resistance. In the insulin-resistant subgroup, fasting insulin dropped by about 52% with alternate day fasting, compared to about 14% with daily calorie restriction. Insulin resistance dropped by about 53% versus about 17%. Same general direction on body weight, completely different result on insulin dynamics. That's a huge clue. It tells us the pattern of eating matters, not just the math of calories. And then there's the Hutchinson study, which compared intermittent versus continuous energy intake in women with overweight. One of the key findings was that the intermittent fasting condition showed better insulin sensitivity outcomes than the continuous calorie restriction pattern, even when total energy was similar. In other words, when you create enough time between eating episodes, the body seems more able to switch gears metabolically. The fasting window itself appears to be doing work beyond simple calorie restriction. So which fasting method is actually best? It's not the longest fast, it's not the most extreme, and it's definitely not the one that leaves you underfueled, obsessed with food, or afraid to eat carbohydrates. The best fasting method for most people trying to reduce belly fat and restore insulin sensitivity is a simple, overnight, time-restricted eating pattern with an early dinner and a consistent 12 to 14 hour fasting window, extending to 16 hours if it feels easy and genuinely sustainable. Here's why this works. It aligns with your circadian biology. Your body's insulin sensitivity is naturally highest earlier in the day and lower at night. Eating earlier and fasting longer overnight works with that rhythm, not against it. You're not white knuckling through an all-day fast. You're creating a clean overnight window where your body does the repair work it was always designed to do. 12 hours is a great starting point. Dinner at 7, breakfast at 7. If that feels easy, move toward 13 or 14 hours. Some people do well with 16, but longer is not automatically better. Better is what lowers stress, improves consistency, supports sleep, and lets you eat enough whole plant food during the day to actually restore insulin sensitivity over time. And here's the 1-2 punch that makes this really powerful. Fasting lowers the traffic. Walking opens an alternate route. Your skeletal muscle is the largest glucose sink in your body. And when your muscles contract, they can pull glucose out of your bloodstream through a mechanism that doesn't fully rely on insulin. Muscle contraction stimulates GLUT4 translocation, glucose transport into the cell through a pathway that can bypass part of the insulin-resistant bottleneck. In plain English, movement opens a side door that works even when insulin's main door is stuck. That's why post-meal walking is so powerful. Not because it punishes you for eating, not because it burns off your meal, but because it activates a second doorway for glucose disposal that operates independently of whether your insulin signaling is working perfectly or not. A controlled trial published in Diabetology showed that people with type 2 diabetes who did light to moderate walking after meals had significantly lower post-meal blood sugar and better glucose control across the entire day compared to those who remained seated. And the effect didn't stop when the walk stopped. Muscle insulin sensitivity stayed elevated for hours afterward. So if you combine a consistent overnight fasting window with short walks after meals, especially after dinner, you create something elegant. The overnight fast lowers the constant energy pressure and helps the body tap into stored liver fat and visceral fat. The walk helps clear glucose in real time and reduce the burden on your pancreas during the hours that matter most. That combination is simple, but physiologically, it's exactly what the system needs. Now, here's the piece that determines whether all of this actually works. If you nail the fasting window, but fill your eating window with foods high in saturated fat, low in fiber, and stripped of their natural food structure, you are still feeding the root cause. The window opens, the metabolic environment doesn't change, and you stay stuck. This is why at Mastering Diabetes, we don't teach fasting as a standalone hack. We teach it as one tool inside a bigger framework. framework. That framework is low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition. Beans, lentils, intact whole grains, fruit, potatoes, sweet potatoes, non-starchy vegetables, high fiber, low saturated fat. Because the goal is not to get better at avoiding glucose. The goal is to get better at processing it. This is also why low carb feels convincing in the short term. If you remove most of the glucose, the meter has less to respond to. But that doesn't restore carbohydrate tolerance. It often just hides the impaired machinery. The lock is still jammed. You just stopped putting the key in. We want to fix the lock. If you want help building an eating window that actually restores insulin sensitivity, not just manages blood sugar in the moment, comment guide below. We'll send you our free guide with meal examples, strategies, and the complete framework. Comment guide below. Now, here's an important note on safety. If you are living with diabetes and you take insulin, sulfonylureas, or meglitinides, you need to build any fasting plan with your healthcare team. Fasting can increase the risk of hypoglycemia with those medications. The ADA specifically highlights hypoglycemia as a major concern with insulin and medications that stimulate your pancreas to secrete more insulin. And clinical data confirm that fasting increases that risk in people on glucose-lowering medications, even though the risk can be managed with proper education and medication adjustment. Don't fast blind. Work with your team. The physiology is on your side, but the medication piece requires individualization. Let's zoom out because the most powerful message here is bigger than any single fasting window. The overnight fasting window lowers insulin exposure, creates metabolic space for the body to tap into stored liver fat and visceral fat, and gives the system a structured recovery period it doesn't get when you eat from morning to midnight. Post-meal walking activates contraction-mediated glucose uptake, opening a side door for glucose disposal that operates even when insulin signaling is impaired. Low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition during the eating window reduces the very fat accumulation inside liver and muscle cells that drives insulin resistance at the root. None of these work in isolation. Fasting without fixing diet lowers the traffic temporarily. Diet without movement leaves a powerful lever unused. Movement without fasting doesn't clear the backlog. But when all three work together, the system starts correcting itself. This is how you reduce belly fat without turning your life into a punishment ritual. This is how you stop treating your glucometer like a slot machine. This is how you start to understand that your numbers are not random. They're responsive. They're telling you a story about liver fat, muscle insulin resistance, meal timing, movement, sleep, and stress. And here's the hopeful part. Physiology can change. Your fasting glucose can come down. Your post-meal spikes can flatten. Your waistline can shrink. Your carbohydrate tolerance can improve. The best fasting method is not the most extreme one. It's a consistent overnight window built around an earlier dinner paired with post-meal walking and supported by a low-fat, whole food diet that lowers the fat burden inside your cells. That is how you reduce dangerous belly fat. That is how you restore insulin sensitivity. And that is how you build a metabolism that works with carbohydrates instead of fighting them. If you want our free guide on how to put this into practice, comment guide below. If this video helped you, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who's been told that fasting harder is the only answer. Until next time, keep those carbs high and that A1C low.